Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Philosophy for the People. And we are going to continue reading from Mortimer Adler's excellent How to Read a Book. And there's a section in here called On Making Up Your Own Mind. And this is brief. This is one, two, three, four paragraphs. I'm going to read it to you like a baby, and then we're going to discuss it. We're going to comment upon it. So this is the third part now in our live reading series, and I've been having fun with this. I hope that you found it helpful, fruitful, productive. If so, let me know in the comments. I always love hearing from all of you, love hearing your feedback. And here it is again, How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler. Brendan's already here in the comments. Baby awaits reading. Baby is going to be read to very shortly, my friend. Just stay tuned. I do have just a brief announcement. After this, in about an hour from now, I'll be live on Instagram chatting with my friend Brandon Vaught about this new book, Wisdom and Wonder. I was invited to be a contributor to this. I have a chapter in here, and it's really a tribute to philosopher Peter Kraft. And we're just going to be doing an Instagram live and jamming around, answering questions. So join us. I'm at Chronicles of Strength over at Instagram. I'll put it in the chat at Chronicles of Strength at Instagram. 10 a.m. live. We'll be jamming on this. My understanding is Ignatius Press, the publisher, is going to be giving away some books to people who join in on that live chat and comment and stuff. So you guys here, I want to see y'all over on Instagram in like an hour, all right, for that. So cool. But in the meantime, let's squeeze in this live reading. Let me just read it first. This is a quick section. If you're following along, we're on page 290, at least if you have this edition of Adler's How to Read a Book. And yeah, and then we'll chat about it a little bit. So I'm going to read to you now, like a baby. On making up your own mind. A good theoretical work in philosophy is as free from oratory and propaganda as a good scientific treatise. You do not have to be concerned about the personality of the author or investigate his social and economic background. There is utility, however, in reading the works of other great philosophers who have dealt with the same problems as your author. The philosophers have carried on a long conversation with each other in the history of thought. You had better listen in on it before you make up your mind about what any of them says. The fact that philosophers disagree should not trouble you for two reasons. First, the fact of disagreement, if it is persistent, may point to a great unsolved and perhaps insoluble problem. It is good to know where the true mysteries are. Second, the disagreements of others are relatively unimportant. Your responsibility is to make up your own mind. In the presence of the long conversation that the philosophers have carried on through their books, you must judge what is true and what is false. When you have read a philosophical book well, and that means reading other philosophers on the same subject too, you are in a position to judge. It is indeed the most distinctive mark of philosophical questions that everyone must answer them for himself. Taking the opinions of others is not solving them, but evading them. And your answers must be solidly grounded with arguments to back them up. This means, above all, that you cannot depend on the testimony of experts, as you may have to do in the case of science. The reason is that the questions philosophers ask are simply more important than the questions asked by anyone else, except children. Bang! That is. Do you guys like that? That was an awesome 4 paragraphs. That is like prime Adler right there. He just packs in so much wisdom, so much goodness in such short space. He's got such a good talent for that. Okay, a lot I want to talk about here. Would like to hear your comments and reflections too. This is open conversation. Check out the sloth. Okay, first, where do we want to start here? Your responsibility. All right, yeah, the fact of disagreement, right? Adler says that the fact that philosophers disagree should not trouble you. This is important because in kind of contemporary epistemology and stuff like that, people seem to be troubled by this, right? Like when you have peers that disagree and they seem to be on an epistemic par, like, should that make us really worried and really concerned? And Adler says no, it shouldn't. And I agree with Adler here. First off, I mean, take philosophy of religion, for example. I've had people reach out to me and say, hey, Pat, there's really smart people in philosophy of religion, and some of them are seem to be really confident that we can answer positively the question of God's existence, and other people seem to be really confident that naturalism is true. And I'm sort of an amateur, and I'm not well versed in this, and it seems like these people are equally smart and they disagree. So what should I do? Can we ever figure this out? And that has never really troubled me, and I don't think it should trouble you, because I think if you just roll up your sleeves and you do what Adler is saying, and what does he say here? That you have to carry on in the long conversation in the history of thought, and you had better listen in on both sides before you make up your mind on that debate. And here's what I found. Now, this isn't true in every area, but certainly I think when it comes to philosophy of religion and the existence of God, is that when you dive into the tradition and you read all the way through, you go to the end of the peer-reviewed rainbow. I mean, I just think that it's clear that theism is superior, that it's true. And I don't see arguments as being on par. I see clear, good reasons to be a theist rather than to be a naturalist. So I just don't think that is an actual thing, right? Yes, smart people disagree, but I think it's something that you can go into and you can evaluate for yourself if you just roll up your sleeves and you do the work and you do the reading. Now, however, there might be a case where Adler indicates where there really does seem to be sort of perennial high level disagreement on things. And this might indicate to us where a true mystery is, where for whatever reason cannot penetrate into this. Now, for those of you who are coming from a Christian perspective, I think there's many examples of this here with the Christian mysteries. The Trinity, of course, is a famous one. And there's many questions regarding the Trinity where there's been profound disagreement about. One is, can reason itself reach to the Trinity? And there's constant back and forth on that. You have people like Thomas Aquinas who want to say, no, it cannot. But then you have other people in the tradition, even in more contemporary times, who say, no, actually, we can kind of give a philosophical case for the Trinity. Now, I will say I'm probably more with Aquinas on that side when I kind of stack up the different arguments. It does seem like this is something that's kind of above reason, not contrary to it, but above it. But there are certain issues where philosophers disagree that do seem to mark a true mystery. And so that's fine. And Adler says, hey, that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because it's good to know where the true mysteries are as well. So the point is, don't let philosophical disagreement bother you. I mean, philosophy sometimes has this reputation, rightfully earned, that philosophers tend to disagree about everything. This is true. But I think when you do what Adler's saying and you read the damn book, which is our motto here, books, plural, I think on a lot of these cases, you will be able to make a judgment. And this brings us to the next point, right? That is your responsibility. You do have a responsibility to do your homework, to read, not just one, but preferably all the important thinkers on a particular topic, but then not to just rely on the testimony of any expert, but to make the judgment yourself, to make the judgment of what is the correct position, right? That you do have the obligation to make up your mind. Why? Well, very importantly, one is that philosophy, unlike science, doesn't require specialized knowledge or special equipment. By specialized knowledge, we mean knowledge that usually comes through specialized experimentation and equipment, right? The philosopher doesn't use that stuff. That's what the scientist does. And this is one way to kind of draw a distinction between what questions are properly philosophical questions and what questions are properly scientific questions. So if I ask the question, what is the difference between existence and non-existence? There's no equipment. There's no scientific test that could possibly tell me that, right? That is a broad metaphysical question. The only thing I can do with that question is just to think really hard about it, and hopefully to think better about it than I did previously or other thinkers, because it's a philosophical question. However, if I ask the question, what are the physical differences between amoeba and paramecium? That is obviously a scientific question, and I need special equipment to figure that out, right? But philosophy doesn't rely on special equipment or experimentation. It takes the broadest, most general aspects of experience that everybody has access to. The fact that there is something rather than nothing, right? that change occurs, that causation is a real feature of the world. And then it just thinks really, really hard about these things, right? Making distinctions. That's what Sokolowski says is the method of philosophy, making distinctions, discovering distinctions, and trying to gain greater understanding and conceptual clarity of the most fundamental structures of reality. Now, the cool thing, and this is why Adler says that philosophy is everybody's business, is because everybody has access to that. Doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean that philosophy isn't a specialization. Doesn't mean that you don't have to master certain tools, right? Tools of logic and argumentation, you do. But it's not something that can only be conducted if you have the equipment to collide particles or something like that, right? But even more so, Adler says you have the obligation to make up your mind because the questions that philosophers ask are simply more important. They're simply more important than the questions asked by anyone else. This is obviously true, right? Because not only do we have the speculative and the theoretical when it comes to philosophy, such as metaphysics, but we also have the practical ethics. What does it mean to live a good life? What does it mean to be a good person? What does it mean to flourish? How can I be happy? Can I be happy? What is the meaning of life? These are the most significant questions that anybody can ask. They're the most significant questions that we have asked up and down the line of the tradition of philosophy. And of course, they are properly philosophical questions, and they deserve a properly philosophical response. So I hope you see this as empowering. Adler, what I love about Adler is he's empowering people here. He's like, hey, experts have their place, testimony has its place, but at the end of the day, philosophy is your business. It's everybody's business. That's why we're bringing it to the people, right? Check out the sloth. Philosophy for the people. And, you can't just make up your mind independent of reading the damn books. You got to do that. But at some point, once you have read the books, let me find this line here. You must judge what is true and what is false. And importantly, when you have read the books, the philosophical books well, and that means reading other philosophers on the same subject, once you have done that, then you are in a position to judge. You don't have to go check with the experts, right? You've done your homework, you've read the books, you've read them well, following the rules laid out in this book of how to read a book well. You've done that, you're qualified. You're qualified to make those judgments. You're in a position then to make up your own mind. You have an obligation to do so because these questions are super important. That is a short section, but I think that's a great section. And this was fun. There's actually a ton more in this book that we could go through. So let me know in the comments. Do you want me to keep doing live readings from Adler's How to Read a Book? If so, maybe we'll do a few more. Otherwise, there's a million other books lying around that I'd like to start reading to you like a baby. And otherwise, we're going to wrap this one up. I'll see you over on Instagram at 10 a.m. Central Time, chatting about this newest volume that I've contributed to. In fact, in this volume, I give a cumulative case for theism. So you might think that that's interesting. Chat with Brandon, and then we're going to be continuing our series on Marcuse with Jim here this week as well. Maybe even today. Yeah. So that'll be happening soon. I see a question here. Let's just take this question quick, then we'll wrap up. Matt says, how many pages of reading do you read daily? I don't typically go by pages because depending on what I'm reading, I might read very few pages, but they're very difficult pages I spend a lot of time with. It's more how much time do I spend reading a day, and it's typically between 2 to 4 hours per day I try to spend reading. And it varies, right? Because I go between seasons of sort of input and output. So sometimes if I'm researching, I'm going to be doing a lot more reading and relatively less writing. I'm always doing a fair amount of reading and writing, but depending if I'm more on the input or output, and this is just how I do things, other people vary, I may be doing more reading or less writing. So right now I'm in a big output phase. I'm writing 2 books, one with Gavin on Aquinas's De Ante, and I have another book that's now up to 41,000 words on the tentative title is called A Beginner's Guide to God, a Philosophical Approach. And I'm just making a metaphysical case, an epistemological case, and a cumulative case for theism. And mostly this is just the output of the many, many years of research that I've already done. But of course, I'm still always reading a lot of stuff in addition to this. So I always start my morning with reading. This is usually just to wake my brain up. Typically not a lot, maybe a chapter or two. So this morning I just reread some of this book. But then in the afternoon, that's when I dedicate a lot more time to research. So for me, it's usually time, and it's anywhere between 2 to 4 hours of good quality reading per day. And depending on the book, it might be a lot of pages, or if it's something new, dense, technical, difficult, I might not get very far. But that's okay. And that's a good thing about reading this book is Adler teaches you how to be a better reader in both an analytical sense and a syntoptical sense, right? How to really engage and wrestle with a book. And that means asking the right questions to a book, right? Really like tearing the book up, marking it, working in the margins, right? Like the book should look like it's kind of been, I don't know if you guys can see this, right? It's kind of been through that it's yours, right? Nobody's buying this book after you're through with it. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. And I would say for anybody and studying, just for productivity in general, you have to set aside the time in advance, right? You have to say, here's my study time, whenever that is, and you have to make it a consistent habit. Some people prefer to do it in the morning. For just personal reasons, I feel that it's better for me if I do most of my output in the morning. So a lot of my creative stuff, my writing, my podcasting, I try to do that before noon. And then the afternoon generally is where I'll do more of my research and reading and all that stuff. So hopefully that helps you, Matt. Thanks for the question. All right, guys, I am going to actually go do a little bit more writing, but we'll see you on Instagram. All right, at Chronicles of Strength, 10 a.m. Central Time, talking about this new book, Wisdom and Wonder, with Brandon Vaught. I haven't got a copy yet. It's out now on Amazon. Check it out. All right, peace. Check out the Sloth.